So, with Mexico declaring war on Brazil, we have some more combatants joining the war, this being Argentina and Ecuador because they're Brazilian allies. We also have Portugal declaring war on the red team because they used to have something in Brazil, and I felt like it because I didn't want the video to be boring. So first up, we have Mexico and Costa starting to push down into Brazil's more under defended areas. Now, this was somewhat of a surprise attack. Brazil kind of saw it coming, but even then, they weren't prepared for where it would come from. They didn't know if it would come from it would come from Peru or any of their fronts that could have happened. They didn't know if it would be a naval invasion or an air invasion. Who knew? Who knew? But now they know, and now we see Mexico pushing down into Brazil, from the northern front. With this, we have the rest of the LAPP declaring war on Brazil, and we have Peru pushing into Ecuador. Ecuador's army is pretty weak compared to Peru's, but Peru is very worn out from this whole expansion thing. So we have Peru pushing in and it's starting to go well. I'll just make that bright red so it looks better because Jesus, it looks terrible with the dark red contrast. So anyways, so we have Peru continuing their push right in, and they send in somewhat of a bulge. With this, they fortify their front as well. They also start a push into Brazil by pushing in from this weird curve thing they have. So with this happening, they have them pushing in from the north, of the curve and the south, as well as two fronts that are going to happen very soon in the middle. And after a while, these fronts are put into place, all eventually connecting with one another. Um, Peru continues their push into Brazil, but the Brazilian army is only regrouping, and that's one of the reasons why they're not really able to push Peru back yet. We see somewhat of a stalemate as Brazil's full armies aren't here, and Argentina's armies are all the way right here. So they're like in the Amazon rainforest, so they can't really do much. Eventually, though, we do see Brazil's forces being ready, and they start to push Peru out of Brazil. Peru calls on its allies for help, so it doesn't fail at its invasion. So Mexico launches another offensive on another front, although it maintains multiple defensive positions while it's on its way. Um, we also see Mexico making a naval invasion over in um northeastern Brazil, and Brazil is starting to go insane. We also see an aerial invasion into Brazil by Mexico and Peru forces. And it's somewhat of a guerrilla pocket. Brazil instantly refocuses to take it out as soon as possible, as it's its biggest threat to the capital. Brazil pushes in from all sides and is able to wipe it out. Um, the Although it was made of some Argentinian forces, as some of them, they're still going up. Argentina finally arrives at the Peru border, and it's starting to push Peru out. Portuguese forces are also getting ready to go in from the Atlantic Ocean. So Peru's even more screwed here. Mexico, though, continues to see victories over on their front by connecting with by almost connecting with the northwestern front. They send in another push down in somewhat of a pyramid shape. Although the bad thing is that once they get to around right here, they're in a siege. The siege starts to around here and it continues along the Brazilian border. Eventually, they also expand out into another area, so now we have trench warfare. With this, they use their other fronts to try to get down and break the siege away. Although it doesn't go too well. Um, the armies are also sieged, and once again we have more trench warfare, with the trenches not being too expensive this time. So now Brazil and Mexico seem like they're going to be getting extremely exhausted because Portuguese forces have just arrived in eastern Brazil. We have Peru opening a new front in Ecuador, so they can try to continue their push through. Um, they send in another offensive, and it does very well until until it hits a screeching halt. We also have Peru opening another front over here, and they're hoping to connect with the Mexican front. Um, Now the plan here from the red team is for Peru to come and liberate the trench systems over on the Mexican front. We also have this other front right here trying to get out, but it also gets trenched warfared, although it's able to be liberated very quickly as it's still connected to the Mexican front lines. This does come at a cost, though, as Brazil is able to slightly push Mexico back, um, taking out some of their trench systems until eventually they have to dig in once again. So now we have both sides caught on a bit of a stalemate here, but now Portuguese forces are arriving in bigger numbers. Um, so now the red team has to hatch a plan because the Portuguese forces are extremely close to them. Um, so here, what we have first is Peru making a massive bulge through. Um, they try to connect with the Mexicans, but it doesn't work in the end. Although they were able to gain massive amounts of land. We have a smaller bulge being created over in their other front, with them being able to fortify their position. Peru continues its expansion until they also get trenched, although it just goes around the front lines which they already have and own. So now we have just total chaos. No one really knows what to do until Portugal finally arrives. With Portugal having a much better army, we have the blue team being able to push the red team back. Peru is in some kind of Croatia shape, and their front from before is also pushed back. Eventually, we even see the crossing of blue team forces pushing in deep into Peru. And the push into Peru is really brutal. As if the red team's pushes weren't already brutal enough. So the blue team is able to meet to around here, and their plan is to isolate the other two red fronts in cutting off their supply line, which they're able to do with one of them. Then continue to push down into Peru until they meet heavy resistance. We also see two sieges being met up with Peru. The next plan is to cut off their coast, so they push in through the other front of Peru so they can get to it. Eventually, they're able to meet Peru's borders for the second time, and they start their push in to take out the northern coast. Eventually, they're able to do this quite well, um, until they eventually meet to around here where they're stopped. So now the borders are kind of a mess, but who cares? Um, Portuguese forces eventually arrive in the north, and we have the trench systems being pushed back to the Mexican front line, and the Mexican front line is also cut down. They meet to around right over here. Although the blue team is seeing more victories and advancements. So now both sides are extremely exhausted, so they decide to get into new combatments.